Hi, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of joybaking.com. Today we're going to make a lemon frosted lemon cake, and this is what it looks like. This is like a pound cake. It has a moist yet dense texture, and it's buttery sweet with a lemon, really nice lemon flavor. And we are also going to frost the cake with a lemon frosting, or you could call it a glaze, which dries to this. It's nice and white and it's matte, a hard matte surface. So the first thing that you will need to do is to preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 180 degrees Celsius. And then we're going to use a 9-inch springform pan. It's 23 centimeters, two pieces like this. This has 3-inch sides, which is 7.5 centimeters. So now, if you didn't have a 9-inch springform, you could use a cake, just a regular cake pan. So clamp that down, and then I'm going to butter the pan. You could just spray it with one of those nonstick sprays. So when I butter, I just melt a little bit of butter, and then I use a pastry brush. Find that easier than just taking a hunk of butter. But you could do that if that's the way you like to do it. And the sides. And then to make sure it doesn't stick, the cake doesn't stick to the bottom of the pan, I like to put a circle of parchment paper. Just put it right in there. And then just put a little bit of butter, so that way the paper doesn't stick too much to the cake. We can peel it off very easily. So, okay. So now for our lemon cake. If you have a stand mixer like I have here, use your paddle attachment, or you could use a hand mixer for this. The first thing you will need, like I said, this is like a pound cake. Lots of butter, lots of sugar, lots of eggs. You will need 1 cup, 225 grams of butter at room temperature. I'm using unsalted butter for a couple of reasons. One, I like the flavor, and two, I like to control the amount of salt in the cake. But, you know, if you have a favored salted butter, you could use that. So I'm just going to put that in there. And then you will need, let's put that there. You will need 1 cup, which is 200 grams of granulated white sugar. Mine's actually off-white because it's organic. And what I'm going to do is take one lemon, large lemon, and I'm going to grate the zest into the sugar. So make sure you always wash your lemons first. And then to grate, you could use one of these like microplanes, or you could, if you have a box grater, just use the fine grate and let's grate it. Now you just want to grate the outside, the yellow part, not like underneath is white, and that's quite bitter, so try not to grate that. Now you don't have to put your lemon zest into your sugar. But you know, I learned this trick a while ago, and I do it for a couple of reasons. One, it flavors the sugar, so I think it kind of increases the lemon flavor of our cake. And two, you know, when you grate the zest, it kind of clumps. So if I mix it into the sugar, I can get rid of those clumps, because there's nothing worse than like when you're eating your cake if you have a clump of zest. Not to say it doesn't taste good, but you know, it's better if it's not in clumps. And then after you do this, you can cut it in half, and then you will need 1/4 cup, which is 60 milliliters, 60 grams of freshly squeezed lemon juice. But always take the zest off before you cut it in half and squeeze out the juice, because otherwise it gets a little difficult. So then all I'm going to do is take a fork, and just work it in. Just to, you know, get rid of all those clumps. I'll just move this out of the way. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing here. Oh, I can just smell. The oils are released into the sugar. I don't know. I think it just helps with the lemon flavor. Okay, that looks good. Well, let's see on my fork. Scrape that off and kind of do what I say, not what I do. So in we go. So now what I'm going to do is beat the butter and sugar together on medium-high speed. You want everything to get really mixed together. We want to get some air incorporated into this mixture so our cake will be nice and light. So medium-high, I'm going to say you want it will become pale in color, light and fluffy. I'm going to say depending 3 to 5 minutes. You know, if you're using a stand mixer, it's usually less time than if you're using a hand mixer. So. Okay. So, you know, periodically whenever you're making a batter, scrape down the sides and the bottom of your bowl to make sure everything gets mixed together. So as you can see, it's pale in color, nice and light, fluffy. That's what you're looking for. So anywhere between, you know, like I said, depending on whether you're using a hand mixer or a stand mixer, 3 to 5 minutes. So now what we're going to do is add 1 teaspoon, 4 grams of pure vanilla extract, and then we're going to add 4 large eggs. Have your eggs at room temperature. 4 large eggs out of the shell weighs about 200 grams. So I'm going to not add them all at once. I'm going to add 1 and then beat that in on, you know, medium speed, and then beat the next one, and so on. Okay, so just going to give it a scrape, make sure. You will have, because we have a lot of liquid fat in here, you will have some curdling. So I don't panic on that, because once we add the flour, it will smooth it all out. So I'm going to add the next egg and get that just 1 in there. And we have 1 left. Now, I know a lot of people ask, they put in the comments, they don't like the curdling. And when you have, like I said, a lot of eggs, butter, you're going to get that. But, you know, if it really bothers you, what you can do, the flour that we're going to use in our recipe, you could take like, you know, 1 tablespoon and just put it in there along with our last egg. It's kind of a fix if it bothers you. Okay, that's good. Scrape. So now, for our dry ingredients, I have 2 cups, which is 260 grams of all-purpose flour, plain flour, minus that, you know, I took a tablespoon out, but the rest of that. And to that, I'm going to add 2 teaspoons, 8 grams of baking powder. It's going to help with the lift and make the cake a little lighter. And just 1/4 teaspoon, 1 gram. I'm using a fine kosher salt. You could use a table salt. And now you could sift this if you wanted to. You want to make sure that baking powder and salt is mixed into flour. I'm just using a wire whisk. So we have the flour mixture, and then remember I said you will need 1/4 cup, 60 milliliters, 60 grams of freshly squeezed lemon juice. So we're going to add like a bit of flour, half of the lemon juice, go back and forth. The flour in 3 additions, the lemon juice in 2. So So I'm going to add about a third. I mean, I'm just eyeballing this. It's not that critical. And beat this in on low speed so the flour doesn't come up in your face. And then I'm just going to add about half of the lemon juice. And scrape. If you like pound cakes, like I said, this is it's like a pound cake. It's just wonderful. And a little more flour. And the rest of the lemon juice. And the rest of the flour. Okay, we are done. You know, this is a great recipe. If you wanted, like say you said, well, I don't have any lemons, I'd like an orange cake. You could easily just replace the lemon zest with orange zest and the lemon juice with orange juice. So when they're in season, maybe you want to try that. And if you wanted just a few little differences here you could do. If you wanted a lemon poppy seed, you could add some poppy seeds here. You know, a couple tablespoons. Some variations. So I got a little flour on the side, finish that off, mix that in. Okay, and got most of it. And you could just use the back of a spoon or an offset spatula just to even this out. This type of cake, it's not going to like say a sponge cake or chiffon, angel food, you know how they really rise in the oven. This one doesn't rise too much. You know, pound cakes don't tend to, because you have a more dense texture as opposed to like a chiffon cake or an angel food cake, very light. So if your cake doesn't rise that much, don't panic. Try to get it as even, because you know a lot of times you put it in the center, too much batter, you don't want a dome or a real high dome. So just, okay, that looks pretty good. Okay. So for baking, I'm going to say, you know, because everyone's oven is a little different, I'm going to say 35 to 45, 50 minutes. So what you were looking for, obviously a toothpick inserted into the center will come out clean. It's kind of typical with cakes. But what you were going to notice, there will be a little rising. The cake is going to turn a golden brown. And another trick to see that your cake is done is around the outside edges, the cake is going to start to just shrink just a little from the edges of the pan. That's another way to know that it is done. And if you take your finger and press it into the center of the cake, it'll like be done firm when you won't have wet batter there. Now, with pound cakes, there is going to be some cracking. I find usually around towards the edges. Don't panic, because that's normal. So I'm going to say 35 to 45. I do rotate my cake pan front to back about halfway through just to give a nice even bake. So our lemon cake is done. So put your pan on a wire rack. Doesn't that look gorgeous? Beautiful golden brown. If I touch, it's set. I put a toothpick into the center, came out clean. And the last thing is you can just start to see the cake coming away from the sides of the pan. So what I'm going to do is let this cool about, say, 10 minutes. And then I'm going to take my spatula and just run around to make sure it's not sticking. You can use a knife. And then undo the clip that's over here. And then I'm going to let this cool completely. And then when we come back, we will do our lemon frosting. So now we're going to make our lemon frosting lemon glaze. So in a bowl, you will need 1 cup, which is 115 grams of confectioner sugar, also known as powdered or icing sugar. Measure it first, and then we're going to sift it because that'll make it a lot more fluffy and get rid of all the lumps, if there is any, from storage. So once you do that, then we're going to add some freshly squeezed lemon juice. You will need, it depends, 2 to 3 tablespoons. I'm going to start with 2, see, and then we'll go from there. You want a thick, kind of pourable, spreadable glaze frosting. If you want it to just sit on the top, you'll need a little less. Some people like to do it a little thinner and then drip down the sides. So I'll just show you how I like it, and then you can go from there. So just stir it. Really smell that lemon juice. Make sure all that sugar is moistened. Okay, so we'll see. So that's what about 2 tablespoons is. I don't think I'm going to go. I don't want it to spread. I just want it to spread over the top of the cake. Well, I'm just going to just a little more. And then I think we're good to go. Now I have put my cake on a cake pedestal. You can just put it on a plate. I'm just going to pour it. And then I'll gently spread it. I don't like too much frosting. I mean, if you liked a lot, you could, double the recipe. But I think this is just enough sweetness for the cake. And then I'm just going to take my spoon, if you have an offset spatula, and just spread it. See, this is pretty thick. Like I said, if you wanted to kind of drip down the sides, just add a little more lemon juice. I'm going to leave that up to you to decide how you want it. Now this, if you leave it out, this frosting glaze is going to dry and become like a matte finish, almost like a little crispy on the outside. Similar, I guess, if you've ever, not as hard as royal icing, but along that lines. So there we have it. There's our lemon frosted lemon cake. Another thing, I wanted my frosting to be like this, just dry right on top of the cake, so it's a frosting. The other thing you can do is you can pour the glaze over the cake while it's still warm. And that way, a lot of the glaze will seep into the cake. If you prefer to have the glaze to moisten the cake, I actually prefer this look. So that's why I do it that way. So that's another option that you might want to do. So there we have it. Like I said, if you leave it to dry for an hour, it'll get like not, right now it's quite shiny. It'll get like a matte finish and like almost like a crust. But we don't have to wait. We can cut it now. So sharp knife, cut right down. And then as always, what I like to do is just to wipe my knife in between cuts with a paper towel so I get a nice clean cut. I think it's a pretty cake. Oh, look at that. Doesn't that look, I think it looks wonderful. You can feel it's nice and moist. And, oh, of course, right here. So let's move this. And let's have a little. You could serve this just like this, or, you know, maybe some fresh fruit or fruit sauce, but, you know, I don't think it needs anything. You know, it has a lot of lemon flavor. You have the lemon juice and then the lemon zest in the cake. And then, you know, you don't have to put a frosting or a glaze on top. But when you put the lemon juice with the powdered sugar and put it on top of the cake, it's just really like a punch of lemon flavor. It's moist, it's dense, it's fluffy, it's buttery, it's sweet. It's really good, really good. A nice, you know, cake if you're having people over and have some tea, coffee. It's a really nice cake to afternoon tea. You can cover, and once that frosting dries, let it dry, then you can cover and store it, you know, room temperature, or if you prefer in the fridge. It freezes very well. So you must try this cake. And until next time, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of joyofbaking.com.